Comrades, I am Admiral Andre, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. Today I'm going to be making a short tutorial on how you can recreate the Vostok spacecraft with the new Making History expansion for Kerbal Space Program. I'll be doing a series of these showing you how to recreate the Vostok and even the Soyuz, and of course the Apollo missions and the Gemini missions and all of those. So if you are interested in that, you've come to the right place. I will say I am going to be using Kerbal Engineer to help me with this. But you, of course, are free not to use it. It is not updated for the current version of the game yet, but it will hopefully help to just show some more information. At any rate, let's get into it. Comrades, here we are. Let's have a look. So, the first step in recreating the Vostok craft is of course to take the Onion re-entry module. The Vostok only ever flew with one occupant, so we will be using the one crew capacity craft for this. Now, as you can see on the right here, it comes with a decoupler already, as I showed in yesterday's video. So we don't need to have another one under here to release this craft from the service module. Let's just see if we can change the force percent. Yes, I like to turn this down. This is obviously totally up to you, but that just reduces the kick that the craft will have when it detaches from the lower part here. Let's even turn it down to 15. I think that might make it look a bit nicer. Now, of course, as with any capsule, we need a parachute, so we can just use the Mark 16 for that. Although, if you want to make it look a bit nicer, we can even move this into the craft a little bit. Let me just move this Kerbal Engineer thing away. So we just use the move tool for this, and I turn the snap off so that we have more fine control. Now you see there's obviously this sort of nodule there already, but we can actually, you know, that we have a lot of freedom here, so we can actually move it right into that. It won't affect anything like that. Although again, this is purely up to you. If we actually have a look, I like to, when I rebuild these various vehicles, to look at the originals. So I think this might be a good idea to give us some inspiration. But of course, we can't really recreate things exactly with stock Kerbal Space Program parts. But that's not really the point. It's just to sort of try and get close enough. So let's have a look at that, comrades. Now, comrades, if we do a very simple Google image search, we will find lots of inspiration here. So this is the Vostok, of course, and as you can see, it does have that sort of nodule on the top, but it doesn't have a bigger parachute on top of that. So this again is entirely up to you, but I think I'm going to move it in a little bit just so it looks a bit nicer. Now, while we are here, we can actually have a nice look at this. We can see obviously beneath the capsule we have a ring of these monopropellant tanks, and beneath that we have sort of a shape that goes out. Actually, this will show it better even though it's very tiny. Maybe we should use this one instead. It goes out and then it goes back in, and then we have the engine there. Now, we also see some kind of radiator panels here, which of course help to keep the craft cool. And on the sides, there are the monopropellant sort of thrusters to help control the pitch and so on of the craft. Then 3 antennas sit on the side where the astronaut's head is, so the door is actually right above that because he ejected out that way. Then we have various antennas on the top and on the bottom, but there you have obviously creative license to use as many as you would like. And we even have these tiny little thrusters on the bottom. Let's just see if we can see another picture of that. What about this one? It looks a bit different, so obviously you'll find various kinds of images. This one shows also some of the thrusters on the bottom, so we might actually try and recreate that. That could actually help us a lot. This is an issue that I mentioned in yesterday's video. So in any case, we have 4 antennas on the bottom and 4 on the top as well. Let's go back to this one. Then there are also these individual antennas sticking out. Of course, we can again decide not to use all of them. That doesn't really matter. I'm just trying to see if we can find other ones. There are a few others that will show even more antennas on the bottom. But let's go back into the game and then see what we can do. So here we are again. Now the parachute is of course just moved slightly into the craft, and we have the 4 antennas now. The issue though with the antennas is, in the real case of Vostok, they detached before re-entry, at least as far as I understand it. Now for us that's going to be a real challenge, because getting individual decouplers for antennas is not really worth it. That's going to be an incredible pain. So I think we're going to use the retractable ones, even though they don't really look like those hook antennas. They certainly will at least help to create that impression. So we just make them sort of line up there. Actually, I might rotate them a little bit more. Again, using the snap off helps to get very fine control. Then I'm just going to move it in so that when we re-enter, it's not so obvious, these antennas. Then I think we're ready with the upper part now. We can actually begin with the tanks underneath. So now we don't need a decoupler, of course. So all that we need is to go to the fuel tanks and take the, I think this is the one. No, is that the right one? That's the right one. The first one is the FLA151S fuel tank adapter. Then underneath we use the FLA150, obviously reversed. So there we have the basic outline now. So underneath this, of course, we need an engine, and the spark is really ideal for that because it really completes the lines there. So we can actually even move this in a little bit, just so that it fits even more flush there on the bottom. Then let's begin changing the colors, comrades, because the plain white, I don't think that looks the best. So we can just right click on it and change it to maybe this gray and orange configuration. Of course it's only gray here, but that looks very nice. And maybe we can do the same with this one. That gives some additional details, and it actually complements the engine as well. So I think this will work for us. Now we need the various monopropellant tanks. So we go to fuel tanks again, sort by size, and use the very small Stratus 5 minified monopropellant tank. So that's quite a mouthful there. Now we don't attach this to the capsule, comrades. You see, we can't actually attach it in the middle because that's the decoupler. So we actually attach it to the top of this fuel tank, as close as we can go. Now for this we need a 6x configuration, and I'll show you why, because this allows us to line them up very nicely in another 6x configuration. So just like that, of course we want to make sure that they are all equally placed there. So I think we need to move this one up a little bit more. I think that'll do. So there we have the basics, comrades. Now we need to begin working on the other details. So we have the door on this side. So Jebediah or whoever is in this capsule, they will be having, they'll be lying down here with their head on this side on the right. So this is where we will have those 3 antennas sticking out. So let's just grab the same antennas again, the Communitron 16, and we'll place them individually. So they point in various directions here. So I think let's turn off snapping and just place one there, and one must go a bit more down. Like that. Now we don't need to be strict about this. So it's really a creative license. Let's move this one a little more maybe. Now we can also move them in, so we just use the move tool and press F to get the local offset, and then we just move it so that just the outer part remains. Just like that. So obviously again we want to try and get them more or less equal. I think that will work. That's nicely fitting there, because we still need to fit this craft into the fairing. Actually, we can even move it in a little bit more. because after all, that grey part is just the housing of the antenna. It's the red and white that's the actual antenna itself. Let's fit it in a bit more. Now here you can spend as much time as you like, but I like to make it till I'm happy. Actually, now they're a bit far from each other, so we might even move them a bit closer so they look like they belong together. Just a little bit. Let's see if we turn back. No, it's not going to help. There we go. So we have a cluster of antennas there. Now we need to recreate the antennas on the bottom. Now actually what we could do for something a bit different is we can use the Communitron 16S. These are like the hoop antennas then. They don't move, of course, and that means anyway we detach them, so it doesn't matter that they don't move. Let's just get them in 4x configuration in the same way that we have the ones on the top. And now we need to play around with them. So I'm just using the E key and then Shift and W to sort of move it in a little bit. Now we will have to do further work on that, but no, I've got it in 6x configuration. There we go. Now I think actually that doesn't look too bad. We can see they're a bit angled, but we really want them more or less in a straight line with the antennas on the top. So let's move them in a little bit more, just make sure it's going in a straight line. And then I think we could even move this part up, although that actually looks better like this, where it's got this block on the bottom. That's really up to you, comrades. Let's move it down a bit more and in a bit. I'm very finicky with things like that. I think that works. That creates a nice line there. So those are our hoop antennas, and we can argue maybe that they are there in case the other ones don't deploy correctly or something like that. Now we need to control this thing, comrades, because it has no reaction wheels, so there's no way to turn the craft for re-entry. So we have to go to command and control. We of course have tons of monopropellant on here, and we can actually see with the Kerbal Engineer Redux, which is the good feature of this mod. But now I'm not sure if this is accurate because it's for the older version of KSP, but it at least gives us an idea. So just the Spark engine gives us over 2 kilometers of delta V. That's almost half to get to orbit, comrades. So we can really reduce this, because that will also reduce the weight that the craft needs to take to orbit. 1 kilometer is perfect. We could even go to the moon with this if we wanted, so we can even reduce it more. Anyway, that's just there. You can of course leave everything full, and that will also give you some more room to maneuver in case you don't maybe have a good ascent, or you want to go to the moon or somewhere like that. Now let's put these. This is now the place anywhere 7 linear RCS ports. Let's place 4 of them on the bottom here and make them point out. Just like that. So we want them in a cross there. Now the thing here, comrades, is you can see it's still angled slightly down. So if we use them, they're actually going to push the craft forward, because the thrust is offset. So let's try and get this as accurate as possible, because we only want this for roll controls. You can see very clearly it's at an angle. So let's try and get it nice and level. We can even use the horizon there in the background to help us. But I think that actually looks quite good. If we look at this line down here, it runs straight through. Again, we don't need to be too pedantic about this. There we go. So now we have reasonable confidence that they will work as intended. We can now even move them a bit down. This is now again entirely up to you, how you would like it. Let's see, what does this look like? Well, for me, I never want to see anything clip inside the nozzle, ever, because that's sort of breaking the immersion there. Now we have a problem with this engine because it actually has a little bit of a pipe running there. Let's take this off. I know we have to do it now again, but we can just use the Shift and Q or E keys to actually, let's change the offset there so it lines up with the antenna. Now we can do what we want. Yes, this should still be angled correctly. Let's just confirm that. Yes, perfect. So now we can just move it back. And we don't have to worry about that pipe clipping into anything. So we can even make it sit on a straight line with that engine housing. Could we even move it a bit further? As long as we don't see anything clip inside the nozzle, I'm happy. So there we go, comrades. Now we have excellent roll control here. Or at least pitch, you know, to change our maneuver. This is not actually roll control. Now, let's see. We could even change the thrust levels on these things, but I'm not going to bother with that now. So the next level is, of course, the various thrusters on the sides, and they are in this sort of configuration. Actually, let me just go back to Google Image. I just want to see if they're in line with the ones on the bottom or with the antennas. So they are actually in line with the antennas, so this is correct. Now we just, of course, if we look at this, now this is up to you again, comrades. If you want your Vostok to have a forward and backwards translation control, then you will keep it like this, because it's angled upwards, so you can actually go down now. But because the Vostok was never really designed for that sort of fine maneuver, you know, it was not for rendezvous or docking or anything, I'm going to do the same thing we did on the bottom and make them point out again. So then let's just use this rotation tool and try and get it as accurate as possible. There we go. Now in this case we have another issue with the nozzles clipping into the craft, so we will have a part sticking out on the top here, but that's okay because the real Vostok also had these sort of extensions of the side here that actually housed the nozzles. So let's see, let's bring it out until it's in line with the outer edge and then move it down a bit as far as we can without clipping into the nozzle. I think that looks nice. Now if we have a look at the center of mass, this is also why I really want us to have these nozzles on the bottom, because the center of mass is actually quite close to where these nozzles are. So they are very bad at maneuvering the craft unless you are simply translating the whole thing left or right. But if you want to point it in a direction, this is not very efficient. But as it is now, we're going to be fine. Let me just think about this. I'm seeing details again that I want to play with. You must forgive me, comrades. This is where I'm in my element. What about if we actually do that? Then we make that whole engine look as if it's white there. Don't clip the nozzles. I like this better. That's even neater, comrades. Perfect, perfect. We don't have to use a shroud on the engine, so that won't be an issue. Now the next step is, of course, the roll controls, because now the problem is if we're in orbit and the window is, let's just see, where's the window that Jeb or whoever will be using? It's this one that has the guards or the guides for sort of looking at the ground. So we need to roll the craft, comrades. Now we need some kind of roll control. So we'll use the same place anywhere thrusters, and now of course we have to point them left and right. So if we use this snap tool again, actually that might be best, and just use W and A. That could work. No, it's going to have to point out a bit, unfortunately, just because of how this nozzle is designed. Let's try this. It might need to even move further. So now we just press F again. Is that going to work? No, it's not. So we're going to have to really play with this one. But you see there, because the nozzle is actually, the way it's designed, it clips into the side very easily. So we have to rotate it quite a lot. But that's fine. Now the other thing is, of course, we still have to roll it as well. Otherwise it's going to push us again backwards, not just a pure roll control. Possibly like that. Let's see if I press F again. I like things to look very neat. We still have the same problem here. It might be that we just have to rethink this whole thing. Actually, I like how those look though. The other option is to just simply go back to this and press C and A, and then of course to move the whole thing out. But that really sticks out too much in my opinion. Although that could work. I'm changing my mind about this now. Let's have a look. It's actually good that I can do this while you're looking, because then you can see sort of my thinking about this whole thing. Now we know this line is the middle point, so we can just place it anywhere here. Let's turn off the snapping, do that, do the same thing on the other side. That is actually not going to look bad, perhaps. Now, we're going to have to roll it out a little bit. That is now inevitable. We'll try and match it. More or less. Then, actually no clipping of the nozzle. There. Now we can try and move this other one. Actually, let's place it first in the middle. Actually, that line is slightly offset from where the center point is. Good grief. That's interesting. If you want to do this easily, comrades, just take one of these 4-way RCS blocks and throw them on like that, and you'll have all the control in the world. So I really just don't want you to think that this is the only way to do it. This is just how I like to do it when I'm recreating the craft. But the easiest way is sometimes the best, especially if you're a beginner. But let's move this. I want this to look nice. I'm going to make this craft, of course, available in the description in a Dropbox. So you are more than welcome to try it if you would like. So you don't have to actually sit there and rebuild it along with me. But you can if you want to. How about that? How about that? That could work. Just be careful not to clip the edge of the nozzle in there. It's not lined up neatly, so let's move this. Oh, good grief. Just press Ctrl and Z if you want to undo something. I want all the nozzles to line up. They must conform, comrades. They must conform. I think that doesn't look too bad. This looks all like it's part of a housing there. It was meant to be like that. So now we have excellent roll controls and translation in various directions. However, as you can see now, we are still pointing slightly up with these roll thrusters, so they will push us down. So I think I'm going to keep playing with this. Oh, it's never going to end. Never gonna end, and it's still not going to be exactly right, but that is not the intention. Just want all the nozzles free here. You'd swear I'm building a real craft here. I want everything exact. The nozzles must not be blocked, otherwise it's not gonna work. They're gonna be stuck. There we go. That's it. I'm happy. I'm not going to fiddle with it more, comrades. So you can see the detail work you can really get lost in. Anyway, now we want more antennas, comrades. More antennas. There are 2 more that point sort of out like this. So we'll put them right in between the other 2. We're still going to move that in a little bit. Just like so. Actually make them line up on the top. And I think this might need to move in a little bit. Even more. There we go. Now we've got something nice there, comrades. On the bottom we can also create more antennas, but the problem is if we place an antenna in the middle here down, then obviously the thruster is going to fire directly into the antenna, and we wouldn't want that. Now again, this makes no difference at all in Kerbal Space Program, but since I seem to be building a real craft, I don't want to do that. So yes, there we go. Now of course, as Scott Manley always says, check your staging. So we want the engine on the bottom, then we want the decoupler, and then we want the parachute. So we've got 900 meters of delta V, which is still enough to go to the moon with just the top tank filled up. And yes, so if you want to be more efficient, you can empty one of them. So that's the Vostok craft itself, comrades, but we are not finished. We are not finished at all. We want the radiator panels because we care about details. Now luckily the small radiator panels are curved, so they work so well for this. It's also best to place the antennas first, because otherwise we're going to have a hard time. Now for this we want 8 times configuration, so they will be overlapping, but that is unavoidable. And as we saw with the picture, they do have this sort of a weird angular shape as well, so it actually complements that. Now let's move them in. Now you'll see they are not exactly in line with the angle of the tank there, so we need to roll them a little bit, just ever so slightly. And then we want to move them in even further. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. We don't want the points to stick above that lower tank, so let's see how far we could push it. Good grief, I'm holding my breath when I do that sort of thing. I think that looks perfect in my opinion for what we can do with these parts. So now we have many radiators on the bottom that will keep the occupant nice and cool there. So now of course we can say that it's complete, but if we want we can add more electricity here, because we only have 50 charge that we can store, because that's all that the capsule has. You also see it has its own built-in ablator, so you don't need to worry about that. This is enough for re-entry from low orbit. Then we just might add some batteries. Now because the lower tank is empty anyway, we can imagine this is where they store some of the parts, so we're not technically clipping things into it because it's empty. So for this, let's be safe and add 4 batteries. That will give us 400 charge. Of course now it's going in 8 times symmetry because of the panels there, but there's always a way around that, comrades. We just place it right here on the bottom where the panels aren't placed, and then we move them in with the fine controls again. There we go. That's it. Now of course if you really want, you could put a fuel cell on here to supply you continuous power, which is actually not a bad idea, to be honest, especially if you're going on a longer mission, because this of course did not have solar panels on it. Now I'm not sure again if they really had fuel cells on the Vostok, but for Kerbal's sake you can do this if you want. You could even place 2 to make sure that it's perfectly balanced there, but I don't think we need to worry about that. That's only if you have something like TAC life support where you need continuous power. So comrades, that is my Vostok. So in the next episode we are going to look at how we build the booster for this craft. So if you're interested in the R7 Vostok craft or booster, then stay tuned for the next episode in this short tutorial series. I hope you're enjoying this, but actually before we go, comrades, I would be remiss if I didn't add one more step. Let's just go custom 1 and toggle antennas. We are going to have an absolute nightmare, comrades, if we have to do this individually, so please remember to do this. Toggle antenna. So now press 1 and the whole thing will extend, and of course when we want to re-enter into the atmosphere we press 1 again and they will all be tucked away neatly. So I'm going to save this and I will say this is tutorial Vostok, and this is Making History Expansion, MHE. So save that, and I will see you in the next episode, comrades. Thank you for watching, and do find the craft in the description if you are interested.